Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the Heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week. The sun peeked out for a moment there, and it was all great. We spent most of the day, what do they call that when it rains like that, a frog choker or something of that nature? I mean, it was coming down earlier today.
It sounded like a lot of rain. I've got a classroom with no windows.
Yeah.
So I don't see any of it. I just hear it, and it was loud.
Well, that's what Greg Bowen and I were over at Berrien County High School to hang up a sign that we're going to use for our interviews when we do those for 104thescore.com.
Okay.
We're putting those up over at Caverna and Glasgow as well coming up when we do our interviews there as well. And while we were there, we were talking to Jay Turner as he was getting ready for the game tonight for the Trojanettes and Pulaski County. And it just was pouring down so hard. I can just... that was on the roof of the gym. I can just imagine what it sounds like in your classroom in there.
Wet day.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about some high school basketball and less about the weather. I guess it's a big week in the 15th district if you look at it in that way, because only the first game counts this year in terms of seeding the district, and then we'll come around to that, and because both games that are big, so to speak, involve the Glasgow Scotties and Lady Scotties. Because Allen County is settled. We know where they are. Their boys are going to be the 1, and the girls are going to be the 4, because the boys have won all their district games, and the girls have lost all their district games.
Well, Allen boys and Glasgow boys have not played, have they?
Yes. Yeah, Allen's 0-3 and 3-0.
Oh, Allen has played Glasgow.
Yes.
Okay.
Glasgow's not played Monroe or Barron.
All right. I was confused. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so Allen is settled. They managed to get all their games.
That's right. Allen defeated Glasgow a couple weeks ago. Okay, that's right.
Yeah, I know. The season has been so odd.
It is.
It's really
so
hard to keep up.
I agree. And you got teams playing 3 days a week. Like Barron's getting 3 games a weekend. You got other teams. Muhlenberg has not played a game this year.
Right.
And I think Bowling Green and Warren – Bowling Green's had a couple of stoppages already. So, yeah, it's hard to keep up with.
Yeah, and also, this is very much like the whole nature of the COVID pandemic. Time almost has no meaning anymore because, technically speaking, we've had, 3 weeks of the basketball season, and it feels like it's been longer than that.
Yeah, I go by seasons. The NFL season is about over.
Yeah.
So that was one season,
Tell time by season.
By the league, that's exactly right.
Yeah, anyway, so like I said, a couple of big district games in the 15th district to determine how it all shakes out once this week's over with. Hopefully we get these games in because, more and more of them are being canceled. When you look on the COVID cancellation list on the KHSA.org, it's a pretty long list at this point.
Yeah, it's oftentimes up to 30 to 40% of the games have been canceled.
Yeah. And as you pointed out, we've got some teams that have not played a game. Warren East has played 4 games. I think the boys have played 2 and the girls have played 4. South Warren's not played many. Warren Central, I think, has only played 2 games total. So, it's Warren County is having a bit of a struggle getting their games in. But as you pointed out, Berrien County is not. And as a matter of fact, as it works out with the Trojanettes, they had a game that was canceled because they didn't play Monroe County. Now, that had to do with Monroe County playing in the All-A. But they picked up a game Saturday and played Breckenridge County, one of the better teams in the 3rd region. So, Berrien County's finding ways to get games in. the Berrien County boys hosted Harlan County earlier.
Yeah, the boys have got 9 games in. I think the girls are at 7 maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe 8, yep.
So, Glasgow's gotten their games in, the ones that are on their schedule. The Lady Scotties have not played since they played Warren East, which was over a week ago. It was a Saturday before this past one. And so they do have a few games this week. Anyway, let's get to the Trojanettes real quick, and then we'll come back to the 15th district thing. They've obviously played a really tough schedule. That Breckenridge County team is very good, loaded with upper-class women, I suppose. With what they have, 3 seniors and 2 juniors, or the other way around. So they've got a pretty experienced team. And the Trojanettes struggled against their pressure, especially in the second quarter, it seemed.
Yeah, I didn't see the game, but talking to Piper and talking to some other people that I trust, Breckenridge County was probably the best team they played.
Yeah.
Better than E-Town, at least more balanced than E-Town. I was not overly impressed with E-Town. I mean, I think E-Town is good, but I don't think they're the elite E-Town. But Breckenridge County had a really good point guard. They had they had a little bit of size, and they handled the ball well. Had shooters, and the rarity of all rarities in girls basketball, they had experience.
Yeah,
I mean, juniors and seniors, and in today's game in girls basketball, juniors and seniors are almost extinct anymore.
Right.
You don't see a lot of them. I mean, that's just the honest truth. So, and they didn't play bad. Barron didn't play bad. I think they led at the end of the first quarter, had a bad second quarter, and they were competitive the whole game. They ended up getting beat, I think, 10, 52, 42, 51, 41, something like that. A game that will help them down the line. I'd much rather – they got a lot more out of playing Breckenridge than they did against Logan.
Right.
In which they defeated Logan like 50-something to 11. I mean, just ridiculous. You know, it was like 49-9 at one time. And
right. The final of that was 52-15. I
don't even know what you get out of that. So the loss to Breckenridge is going to be overall a much more productive game for them in the future.
Yeah, I thought Piper made an interesting point in her post-game interview with Jay Turner where she said one of the things that the younger players, or probably all the players, learn from a game like that is every possession counts. And so they had turnovers.
It counts more. I mean, you pay for your mistakes against better players and better teams.
Well, and that's what she was meaning, is that you can't be frivolous with the ball. You can't just – you got to make every play finish with something,
meaningful.
Without a unforced turnover.
Yeah, meaningful. Sure, that's why you play good teams. Good teams can expose what you're not real good at.
Yeah.
And when you play teams that are not as talented, you can just get away with more.
Yeah.
And
mistakes don't really affect you.
Right. And I really think, and I guess this is an indictment a little bit of basketball right now. I think for in girls basketball in this area, you're going to have to search out some teams. Mm-hmm. If you're good, you're going to have to go find other teams, because there's a lot of teams this year that are not real strong.
Yeah.
And I commend Piper for picking up that game and driving to Owensboro. It was a good experience for them, too. They played at Kentucky Wesleyan University. It's an old, historic facility. Mm-hmm. Good experience for them. And it doesn't hurt in basketball a loss at all in a regular season.
Yeah. We'll get back to this other stuff here in a little bit. But we talked about this a little bit last year. The fourth region had some slippage last year in girls basketball. I mean, because traditionally speaking, it's been a very good girls basketball region. One of the better in the state, really. And last year there was some slippage in it. And this year it's really down, to be honest with you. I mean, and I don't know if there's maybe some good younger players, but this year's affecting us getting the opportunity to see some of them play. Or some people have just decided not to play altogether. And I mean, there are a couple of cases like that for the Glasgow Lady Scotties. They had two seniors that decided not to play.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think the lack of summertime practice and some of the things probably has hurt a little bit, to be perfectly honest with you. You don't see as many, especially girl basketball players, get together at the park or things like that to play. And that's probably – and it could be a cycle or whatever. I know Barron has good young players. I mean, but what the district and region is like right now, especially the region, I think overall, I think it's fair to say it's a little down. But that's you take it, if it's down and you're not, then you better take advantage of it. That's exactly right. It's not. Right. I mean, if I was coaching, I would look around and it's not my fault.
Yeah.
And nobody felt sorry for us my last couple of years when you had three teams in the top 20 in our district: Monroe, Glasgow, and Allen. Right. And Allen was a state finalist. Nobody was. I didn't get a whole lot of sympathy letters sent to me going, "Hey, it's tough. Everybody's really good around here."
Yeah, but that's also the point. I mean, it's the flip of that right now in the 15th district. I mean, because the Barron County girls
in the region too,
in the region. Yeah. But I mean, in the district, which you just pointed out, has traditionally been a very strong district in the region itself. One of the, I would say, top to bottom, probably the best district in girls basketball. Now, Bowling Green, South Warren, or whatever, have had, and Warren East through the years have had some really good teams in the 14th district. But there's a run there.
This district, I think, was the best in our region.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question about it.
Once Monroe County joined in 2006, I mean, there were three good teams then. Glasgow was the odd one out. then you guys were the odd ones out there at Barron County for a while, and the other 3 were really good.
Yep.
But this year, I think, Glasgow might be the second best team.
I think
in the
they
district.
are. I don't think there's any doubt. I think they've done a good job at Glasgow. I think Coach Pippin has done a good job, and they've been very competitive. Now they didn't play last week, and it wasn't
how that affects them.
It wasn't because of COVID. Well, I think he was looking forward to a week of practice to just correct some of the mistakes and so forth. And oftentimes you need a balance. You need to play because you learn a lot by playing, but you also need some time to fix mistakes.
Right.
And I think he was looking forward to that. And the only danger with taking a week off, having that week off, is if you come back, you just better hope you can play. There's games to play.
Right.
But I think Glasgow has been a team that I would say has performed better than I think some people's expectations.
Well, but I would still say right now in the 15th district, Barron County is clearly the best team
They are.
in the girls' side.
They are. I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's just different for the 15th district, traditionally speaking. Let's talk about the Lady Scotties, because you mentioned they took the time off. They play at Monroe County tomorrow night, and then they host Barron on Friday. Boys, girls, both those games. And I'm curious to see how the Lady Scotties come back from that layoff and what they worked on, because their last outing, they got the big win at Warren East on the last second play there, Ansley Adwell. That had to be a good boost for them in a lot of different ways, because they are a team that has a bunch of younger players who have not really played at all because they had so many players in front of them. Outside of Mia Cassidy, really, she's the only one with Ansley, the only senior coming back, that really played quite a bit, last season. So it's an interesting mixture, and they're kind of building for the future, but you don't want to waste Ansley Adwell's senior year at the same time.
No, when you got a player as good as Ansley, they don't come around a lot.
Right.
So you gotta take advantage of that situation now.
Yeah.
And Monroe has struggled.
Right.
And Monroe is not as I watch Monroe, and I like some of their pieces. They've had a hard time putting together. They're good enough to beat some teams. Mm-hmm. They just haven't played that well so far.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised when I saw them play. I expected them to be a much improved team from last year.
Yeah, and they may be. They could as the year goes on. It's still it seems like this, but it's only 3 weeks in the season.
I know, it's so weird.
So it is weird. So there's chances for a lot of teams to improve. But yeah, this is an important week for Glasgow because they had the 2 district games. Mm-hmm. Barron girls has Pulaski tonight.
Yeah.
A home game, and then they go to Casey tomorrow. You talking about Breckenridge and Owensboro on Saturday, and then Pulaski and Casey. Those are 3 teams that you normally don't play a whole lot from from different regions. The 3rd region and 2 12th region teams. And the 12th region, I would argue, has been in the last 10 years the best region in the state. Yeah, right up there with the 2 Louisville 6 and 7 and the 9th region. Mm-hmm. I mean, Mercer County's coming out of that. Southwestern Pulaski's coming out of that. Lincoln, Rockcastle, really, really strong girls region.
Yeah, and Pulaski County may be the 3rd or 4th best team in the 12th region right now. They may be 5th. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
But, and as you just pointed out, in that region, that's actually a pretty good team.
Good reason, yep.
And that Casey County is always tough. They're probably down a little bit this year because they did lose a lot of players.
Yeah, they had a run of 3 or 4 years where they had the same kids. Freshmen, they started for them forever. That group has graduated.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's never easy to win at Casey County.
No.
But back to the Glasgow thing. So if Glasgow, the Lady Scotties win the one game,
they need to split.
Yeah, if they get the split, then they're going to be the 2 or 3. Well,
no, they need to beat Monroe.
Right. Well, they can't be the 4, so they can be the 1 or the 2 or the 3, because as we discussed, Allen County's already lost 3 games.
That's right.
Glasgow's already beaten.
That's right.
So they're going to be they can be the 1, or they can be in that 2-3 game, which would make them play Monroe again, because Barron would have completed the sweep of the district.
That's correct.
Meanwhile, on the boys' side, it's the same picture, but in reverse in a way. Glasgow does need to beat Monroe, because they probably don't want to wind up with that 4 slot.
True. And both Barron and Allen and boys had good weeks last week. I mean, Barron and Glasgow had good weeks. Right. Barron went 3-0.
Yep.
And that's, of course, That's with the injury to Aiden Niken. He had his surgery. Of course, Macy Lockhart is going to have hers. I don't know exactly when, but Barron got blew out Monroe last Friday,
right,
by about 30. But they also got a good win against Logan and a good win against Hart. And one of the things that's happened is the guards have really picked the pace up. I think Gavin Withrow had 19 points, maybe a career high Friday against Monroe. Barron actually was like a 10 out of 15 from three. That's the one bugaboo they've had all year is shooting three, and they shot it well. Mason Griggs had a big game against Logan. I think he had like 21 points.
Yeah.
And Tay Pointer has just been rock solid, consistent. The one thing that he struggled with his last couple of years has been inconsistency. Well, he's solved that, and one of those 3 games he had 19 points and didn't hit a three.
Yeah,
he's found other.
I think
he's
he was
found
0 for 2 from 3.
Yeah, he's found other ways to score, getting to the free throw line. He's really playing well, and I think Ryan Shirley's picked up the pace too. Ryan is one of those players that oftentimes didn't score a lot of points, but he gets a lot done. And his defensive presence, his rebounding, his toughness has really, really helped the team as well. They clearly miss Aiden Niken anytime you lose a player of that note, but they have done a pretty good job since then of kind of riding the ship, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. And they have a tough game tomorrow. They have Central Hard tomorrow, and the Glasgow game Friday is obviously important.
Yeah, you mentioned the Scotties had a good week. They lost the game to LaRue County, which is obviously usually a very good team in the 5th region,
undefeated, I believe.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
And then they came back and went to Bethlehem. Now look, they've been on the road. They've not had a home game.
Kind of like the football team.
Yeah, it really is. Their home game, their last home game was the January 8th 9-point loss to Allen County. Mm-hmm. So they've been the road warriors since then. So they went to, they lost at LaRue, then they went further up the road, Nelson County, beat Bethlehem. The interesting thing about that game to me was Ashton Serwinski led them in scoring
20 points.
20.
Yeah.
And he's usually, got 9 or 10 rebounds a game, something like that. He's kind of the guy that cleans glass for him a lot of times. So that's a welcome situation for them.
And Sam Bowling and Jackson Poland continue to put up double figures.
Yeah. I think Poland maybe only had 3 points in that game against Bethlehem. So, he was a bit off in that one apparently. But, they got the team win, as they say, John.
In a very small gym. I've played a couple games at Bardstown, Bethlehem. It is pretty small, to say the least, and it's not an easy trip to get there. It's right in the middle of Bardstown, and that's to get to Bardstown from Glasgow, it takes a while.
Yeah, you got to wind your way through the land of Lincoln before you get there.
Right.
So anyway, that's a good win for them, and like we talked about, they probably want to stay out of that 4-seed slot. I think Allen County right now is clearly the best team in the district on the boys' side. That's not to say they're unbeatable. It's just that right now they're clearly the best. They went 3-0 in their games in the district. So the Scotties, they have that chance. If they beat Monroe would wind up in that 4-seed, and it'd be locked in. Barron and Glasgow would be playing in the first round.
So far, in the first 3 weeks of the season, Monroe appears to be the weakest team in boys.
Yeah,
they've not been overly competitive with very many teams.
Yeah. I will tell you what, one of the things I was surprised about when I saw them Friday night against Barron County was they do not have any team size. I mean, usually Monroe has a couple of kids that are pretty big kids, but not right now.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing to watch.
Sometimes it's cyclical,
Yeah. So, it's an interesting week. Again, I say hopefully we get all these games in. There already have been some shuffles, I think, that begin next week to Barron's schedule. I would not be surprised if there are any Warren County teams on anybody's schedule that those things wind up getting canceled either because of COVID concerns or because they're having to make up their district games because they've missed so many in the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, and a lot of these schools, it's a quarantine that's getting them.
Yes.
I mean, it's just – and the deal with the quarantine, there's really not it's really each health department per county kind of has their own little – way of doing these quarantine and tracking and so forth, which makes it altogether, I guess you could say, inconsistent throughout the state.
Yeah. I mean, this is very much like what we talked about in the fall. You don't know what's going to happen from week to week, so get the games in, I would say, as best you can. And if they get canceled, just be prepared and pay attention for possible changes.
We'll have it on 104 for the score.
That is correct, John. You are right. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, the Super Bowl is set. Did you enjoy the conference playoffs?
I did. I enjoyed it.
A couple of things. Let's start with that Buccaneers-Packers game.
All right.
Because I think we both picked the Packers to win, or we both thought the Packers would win that game.
I just assumed basic coaching would take place. I did not assume that Matt LaFleur would just fall apart as a head coach.
Man, look, here's the thing. There are two things about that game. The first one was I was not sure how good the Buccaneers defense actually was at the end of the season going into the playoffs. I thought it had gotten better, and it had. And I really think as I watched that game, I was reminiscent of when the Broncos had Peyton Manning at the end of his career. They had a great defense. Now, that defense was better than this Buccaneers defense. But the basic premise of the game was play good defense, call some good offensive plays, make some good plays. Because we look at that Buccaneers game, Tom Brady was good in the first half, and he was not good in the second half. I mean, one of the interceptions of the three he threw in the second half went off of Evans' hand, but the other two were just bad on his part. And Green Bay could not take advantage of that at all. I think they got a field goal out of those three. Well, they got 2 field goals out of those 3 turnovers, but it was it was kind of like the Browns the week before, in my opinion. They basically just didn't do the things that got them there.
All that what you said is true. I also thought it was horrendous coaching.
Yeah,
and I don't like to criticize, but I can criticize a professional coach.
He gets paid for you to criticize him.
Well, I mean, they get paid good money, and it was I don't know what school of coaching that some of these NFL coaches are going in terms of decision-making.
Yeah.
But, the end of the first half, it looked like the Jets defensive coordinator had taken over for Green Bay.
Man, that was the worst defensive play.
6 seconds, no timeouts, and you go man-to-man on the receivers with nobody over the top, and you give up a 50-yard touchdown pass at the end of the half. I mean, a high school defensive coordinator probably should get fired for that. Much less your defensive coordinator. I mean, that's and if you're the head coach, you've got to be you've got to be aware of that too. You got to see that. Call timeout, stop it. As soon as you see your guys lining up across there, either call timeout. If you don't have any timeouts, I just run out on the field myself as a coach. Just give me a penalty because that's inexcusable.
Well,
and work. I mean, go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say one of the things that we may have learned from that game is sometimes it's good to commit an intentional defensive foul. By going across the line of scrimmage. In the infraction there.
Well, yeah, but
to stop the play if you have no timeouts left.
Yeah, but just incredible. I just would not think at that level. Because, these NFL coaches, just football coaches in general, they spend, 24 hours a day? Film or at the what? I laugh at it as a former basketball coach, but let's just be honest. They kind of brag about the amount of time they spend on film study and all this other stuff. Well, maybe they're spending too much time because a Little League coach knows basically you back up and nothing over the top, and you're going to tackle anybody. Just tackle them, and the quarter's over. I know they didn't want to give up a field goal, so they didn't want to give up the sideline route where they could give up a field goal. But daggone, a field goal is better than a touchdown.
Well, look, the defensive back looked like he was looking in the backfield, whenever the play started. But here's another thing about that: they defended that play like Tom Brady could not throw the ball 50 yards. Now, that's how the Buccaneers played Drew Brees a week before because that's true. But Tom Brady can throw the ball 50 yards.
That's just
it was just bad all the way.
Bad, and then the play that's even more, in my opinion, I can't understand with 2:06 left in the game on 4th and goal from like the 8 or 9, and you're down 8 already. Mm-hmm. That you don't go for it when you got the MVP of the league and Aaron Rodgers, and by just conceding to a field goal, you're giving the ball back to Tom Brady, who's the best quarterback in the world at getting a first down to run out of clock.
Well, and on top of that, Leonard Fournette played real well in that game.
But,
he had big runs when they needed them.
But
too.
what does a field goal even do?
It does nothing.
You know, I could maybe understand going for a field goal if that got you within a field goal.
Yeah.
But to just basically just give up and go, well, you know, we'll just kick off and we'll just stop Tom Brady. Well, that's not Tampa Bay is not the type that they're just going to run it 3 times.
Yeah.
They didn't run it 3 times.
Right.
They did not. They threw it, which I knew they was going to throw it. And then it comes down to stopping them, and you know, they didn't exactly stop them the whole game.
Right.
And that sealed their fate, and they completely took the ball out of Aaron Rodgers, and I just don't understand. Now, listen, Aaron Rodgers is not – he had a really, really a big-time game, but he wasn't great in those 3 shots at the end zone. He should have ran the ball on 3rd down. He had if he couldn't have scored, he would have gotten close.
You know what? I went back and I watched that
there
third
was
down
all
play.
kinds of room, and I don't, you know, I know he was trying to make a play, but that if he had that to do over again, I think he would have run it.
You know what? There was a curious thing about that play.
He probably would have really run it if he knew he had 4 downs.
Well, exactly. I mean, look. So here was the thing. Okay, I watched it when it was live, and I'm like, oh. When I saw it live, I said, oh my gosh, he's going to run for the touchdown, because it looked like it was wide open, and it kind of was wide open. But I decided today to go back and watch that play a few times, and here's what I saw. When he first broke through, he started to pass the ball. He thought Adams was open, and then he changed his mind. So he didn't get out of that defensive pressure up the middle with the intent to run when he went. And that actually kind of changed up his rhythm, his running rhythm at that point, which wasn't – I didn't notice that live. When I went back and rewatched it a few times, that's what I noticed. He probably would not have gotten to the end zone, because he could have run toward the pylon, but there was a defensive guy who was behind him.
There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee he could have been run down. They could have whatever, but he could also made the play.
Well, and that's the other thing.
That's right.
Because, you know, Trent Dilfer's answer to the field goal was, well, Aaron Rodgers should have run the ball. Because even if he hadn't gotten there, they probably would have gone for it on 4th down. But I still don't know why they didn't. That was basically the game.
It's inexcusable.
Yeah.
To play as a coach that conservative or scared, it's just it's you're taking it out of probably the best quarterback in the game, Rodgers or Mahomes, and giving it to maybe the best quarterback that's ever played, and saying, yeah, we'll take a chance in stopping them, and even if you stop them, you still gotta go all the way down the field and score a touchdown.
You know,
with probably, you know, not a whole lot of time. So it's just 4th and 8, you can go for the game and at least try to tie it. Mm-hmm. Or let's kick a field goal, get a stop, they'll punt, and then we got to go the length of the field and score another touchdown. I just don't like those chances.
Well, also, it's a difference here, too. All right, yes, you still have the 2-minute warning, and if the Packers had 3 timeouts, then maybe you can try to take that gamble, because you can kill the clock 4 times.
You still got to stop them.
Yeah, you still have to stop them, but
that's my point. You got to stop them, and that's, you know, it's one thing to stop Tom Brady from scoring a touchdown. He just needs a first down.
Yeah.
And they're not going to play. I just knowing Brady, and plus knowing Bruce Arians, the head coach, they don't play conservative. They're not going to just hand it off 3 times and we'll punt it back to you and then we'll stop you. That's not what they're going to do. Them, Bruce Arians and Andy Reid of Kansas City, and Belichick of New England, they're going for the win.
Yeah, they're killers.
They're going for the win, and Green Bay did not, and that's the difference. And I would just think a 36-year-old coach would be just a little bit more aggressive.
You know what's interesting to me?
And I don't understand that, but Tennessee did the same thing in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's right.
They had it inside the 50, 4th and 1 or 2 with Derrick Henry. They punted it away and never got it back.
You know, you look at
I just don't understand what they're thinking.
We go back to last year with the Texans when we got on here and we talked about the decision they made when they went for it on 4th down and when they didn't go for it on 4th down, the different moments in those games and how both those calls were probably wrong. Mm-hmm. And basically we see this year that coach no longer has a job, you know, because it turned out that he was not – there came times – in games where he just did not make good decisions. He may do everything else well, but there is a difference. You can develop a scheme, but can you coach in a game?
Well, yeah, that's right. And no question, the Matt LaFleur has done a great job. Great young coach. I mean, they've done a great job. Been in the championship game back-to-back, not the Super Bowl, but the NFC Championship. But these are really during a game, whether you're coaching high school girls basketball or you're coaching the NFL pro football, there are certain – you have just so much control of what's going on. One of the things as a coach that you have control of, it's like timeouts and those decisions. Do I go for it? Do I kick a field goal? Those are really, be honest with you, the decisions that you make that really impact the game. And that's about all you really can do as a coach.
Yeah.
Those decisions or who to play. Everything else is all on the players.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think he let the team down.
I have to agree with you, and I do believe that Aaron Rodgers should have run it on that third down. Even if he didn't make it, because
and he played great. He was still tremendous.
But he did not. He had 2 drives where he also did not necessarily make the right decision.
Well,
and both those were costly.
That's right, but they're not going to be perfect in terms of that.
He played better than Tom Brady.
Oh, yeah.
His team should have won.
340 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Yeah, he was great under a lot of pressure, and one of his guys dropped one in the end zone.
Yeah,
hit him right in the hands.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was great. He was not the reason why they lost.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, Patrick Mahomes was also
great,
just dazzling, and I just don't think. I mean, I hate to sell the Buccaneers defense short because it's actually impressed me at this point with their previous game against the Packers, the way they've played toward the end of the season.
Patrick Mahomes is great.
Yeah,
but he also has great weapons.
I mean, but the thing is like you can. The thing about the Chiefs is 3rd and 10 might as well be 1st and 10 for them.
The thing about the Chiefs is they got 3 players that almost nobody has.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce is tremendous. Tyreek Hill, there is no receiver that can run like he can.
Yeah.
And then you have Mahomes. Only player I think comparable to Mahomes is Rodgers.
Yeah.
In terms of the things that he can do. And you got an innovative coach, and their defense is just good enough.
Yeah. They do have some big players on their defense.
Right. I mean, they're not.
But they're not a great defense.
They're not the Baltimore Ravens defense or the Chicago Bears several years ago or the Steel Curtain. No. I mean, you can still score on them, but they're really good when they have a lead.
Yeah. And the Bills really didn't stand a chance from the get-go. And to be honest with you, the Bills' biggest problem was the fact they couldn't run the ball really all season without Josh Allen running.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of, in a strangest sort of way, that's kind of a mirror of the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, they didn't look quite as good as they had the last so many games, and they didn't. Yeah. They look small compared to Kansas City. Mm-hmm. They're going to be fine down the road. They're still really good, but when they stood up to Kansas City in a playoff game, they didn't look like they were at their level.
Yeah, well, and I think they're going to be fine too because Josh Allen from last year to this year proved he's a guy who takes losing personally and tries to improve upon it, not dwell in it.
Right.
And that means he'll come back better, and the people around him.
But Buffalo don't have any regrets.
No.
Green Bay, it's hard to stomach that. If you're a Green Bay fan or you're a player, boy, there's a lot of sleepless nights because I think Green Bay is better than Tampa, even though Tampa beat them twice. It's kind of hard to say that. I think Green Bay overall is more talented. Tampa Bay beat them twice this year.
Yeah, Tampa Bay had
handily the first time.
Yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay obviously maybe had the better defense, as it turns out. But also, going back to what you said about Bruce Arians and Tom Brady, they have a mindset that obviously the Packers did not when it came to crucial plays.
At least the head coach didn't.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's got to be the difference. So who do you think's winning the Super Bowl?
I like Kansas City. I mean, it's not going out on a limb. I think they're the best team.
I just don't know. I mean, look. The Buccaneers can get pressure on quarterbacks who mostly just hang out like statues in the pocket. Even though Aaron Rodgers can move and scramble, he's still kind of a big target. And I just think the Chiefs' offensive creativity will be such that they don't allow Patrick Mahomes to get that kind of pressure on him. They're gonna force the Bucs to play defense all over the field, and that's going to be hard to do.
Yeah.
So I just think the Chiefs. The Chiefs just right now are an unstoppable force offensively, it looks like.
When they're focused.
Yep, when they're focused, exactly. I mean, look, with all their regular players, they've lost one game in, a year and a half, basically.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So it's pretty, and even that one was a fluke against the Raiders. So they're pretty impressive right now. All right, it's a Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, it's our college basketball segment, which means here's what we're going to talk about to start with. The Hilltoppers actually got another sweep in a Conference USA doubleheader.
Back-to-back.
Yeah.
Back-to-back sweeps.
And meanwhile, they also beat the number one team in the SEC earlier in the season at Alabama. And yet their Ken Palm rating is like 78 or something like that.
Yeah, that's because of the conference again.
Yeah.
The conference just weights them down like
an albatross.
It's an albatross. That's correct. Because the Alabama win is looking better and better and better as Alabama's flying up the polls.
Yeah, and they're beating the snot out of people.
And that's what I said when they if they could have knocked West Virginia off, that would have been a monster one.
Yeah.
And they led, with 14 minutes to go, and then couldn't hold on. That would have been another big win in their feather. But listen, all they can do now is control what they control, and they're playing pretty good basketball. It's nice to see Carson Williams get it going. Mm-hmm. He and Bassey Bassey's just, he's in line, AP first-team All-American at this pace, and they go in the middle. Now, middle's down. They're very down. Middle has not recovered since losing their coach to Ole Miss. That's been a big loss. Yep, and Coach Stansberg did not coach, was sick, so former Taylor County High School, Campbellsville, Kentucky star, and Phil Cunningham. I played against Phil when he was at Taylor. I was at Green. Yeah. And he's went in there and got 2 wins for the Toppers. It's always good to beat Middle, and moves them to 13-4.
Yeah, I think that's their best record since 2001, I think is what I saw. So, that best starting record since 2001, I think it was. Outside of those 2 blips where they lost the 2 conference games in those back-to-backs, they really have had an impressive season in so many ways. The thing about this past weekend and the weekend before that impressed me most about them was they won the games that they had lost the 2 weeks previous.
Well, they're not getting behind 28-9. And, concentration-wise is better.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's what I mean, because they lost that second game both times, and it was obvious they just weren't starting well. They finished well in those games, but that's not well enough. These games, they're not letting the other team get going.
Right.
They're locked in, as you said, focused from the beginning, which is critical. And as we see from these ratings, that if they want to get in the NCAA tournament, they're going to have to be locked in all the way through the conference championship. They're going to have to win it.
More than likely, that's the fate of Conference USA.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to be 26-4 at the end of the year and have an outside shot at an at-large bid, but it's probably not going to be the case.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we'll go ahead and slip on over here to the SEC, where we've already mentioned that Alabama is rolling. Did they beat LSU by 30 on Friday? I think it was.
It's more than that. And one time he was up 40-something.
Yeah, I think the final was 106-76.
The SEC is not a conference that has a whole lot of good teams in it.
No,
because even the vaunted Tennessee, who got all the way up to 6th or 7th in the country, lost to Missouri, and they lost to Florida both last week. And so they're kind of coming down the earth. Alabama is right now by far the best team.
Yeah.
They can flat score,
shoot,
and they put up a lot of points and guard you good enough. And they have kind of moved to the top of the polls, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's who Kentucky gets next. And Kentucky, they also beat LSU, but not by 30.
No, LSU couldn't guard a stick. Let's be honest with you. If Kentucky puts 82 points up, LSU gave up over 100 to Alabama, about 110, and then they go to Kentucky, and a team like Kentucky who can't score, all of a sudden can score.
Right. So maybe LSU's defense then, huh? They make everybody look good.
They do. So, Kentucky, it'll be a tough game against Alabama, but you got to think teams can only play at a certain level for a while. Alabama's probably due for a little bit of a come back to earth, and the expectations on Kentucky have dropped a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised to see Kentucky go in there and play well.
This does fit the role of if Calipari's trying to convince his players that we're the underdogs, we need to pull together, and we got to play for us and that kind of thing. This is kind of they're in the perfect situation if he can get that message through them, and they can do it.
That's correct, and plus the pressure jumps to Alabama. It's the first time Alabama has been ranked this high in basketball for a long time, and that's kind of that subtle pressure sometimes shifts a little bit. We'll see how well they handle it, but I don't have any doubt. I think Alabama's better than Kentucky, but I wouldn't be shocked to see Kentucky go down there and make this a really interesting game. Yeah. I'd take Kentucky in the points.
Yeah, that's right. And then the Louisville Cardinals, they beat Duke after they bounced back.
Played well too. That was a good game against Duke. They bounced back after two disappointing losses to Miami and Florida State, in which they basically Coach Mack was very disappointed in. Yeah. And again, Louisville's guards are really good. I mean, Carlik Jones is just tough, and David Johnson are really good. But Duke's not really Duke. They've lost 3 in a row too. They're not in the top 25, but regardless, Louisville still got the win. But it's a game where oftentimes it comes down to making shots. I mean, Duke had 3 threes in the last 20 seconds, spot on, that would have put them in the lead, and they missed all 3. Yeah. So sometimes it comes down to a make or a miss. Yeah. Oftentimes sometimes it's just turnovers, this and that. Against Duke, it came down to Duke missed 3 shots.
I mean, it's
really, it's what it comes down to. They had, and 2 of those 3s were point blank, top of the key, wide open. You got to make those shots. I don't know what to say. You got to make them, and they didn't. And I'm glad they didn't. And Louisville took advantage of it and made their free throws down the stretch. Carlik Jones, by the way.
Yeah, I'm fine with where Duke is at the moment.
Well, I mentioned it, and I'm not just saying it to be saying it, but when I mentioned the fact that the karma was not good with Duke, that Coach K, from the beginning of this season, has been complaining a little bit about what should we play, should we not play. It's maybe we should push it back. He has not been all in, and I don't think his team has been all in. Mm-hmm. I heard that for the first time this week by the national media. Actually, was commenting on that about, do you think some of Coach K's comments has had an effect? It's the first time I've actually heard them starting to talk about that a little bit, and I think oftentimes players, they hear the echo from the coach, and oftentimes they're a reflection of their coach, especially a coach of his stature. And, Duke hasn't been very good defensively for about 5 years.
Right.
They don't play. They don't have enough grinders to go out there and do those things. They have too many, I think, just offensive players, and now they've reverted pretty much playing zone. Mm-hmm. And will they get better? They'll get better. But again, I just the karma with Duke right now is not great.
Maybe it's also a product of his responses to student sports journalists.
That was ridiculous. That was not a bad question the kid asked.
It was not.
It wasn't even close to a bad question. You can tell the audience what you're referring to.
Yeah, so this kid who works, I guess, for the Duke newspaper, he's a student journalist there, and he asked Coach K
basically, where do you go from here?
What do you do?
Lost 3 in a row,
And Coach K's response was basically, well, I don't want to. Let's not talk about that. That's a bad question. Why don't you? Let's ask me about this.
And then he started questioning the student about, what's your major and all this stuff. Yeah,
I mean, it was just petty,
arrogant.
It was. I mean, I think going back to his stature, I think sometimes, and this kind of goes back to
Coach K is not the greatest loser in the world.
No, he's not, and he's probably not used to this situation. But you, with the stature he has and the admiration so many people have for him, you would expect him to be a more highbrow responder to such things. Especially, he knew that was a student
at Duke.
I mean, if I'm that student at Duke, I'm going to be like, I may love Duke, but I think the rest of my time here is going to be spent asking him questions. So tick him off.
I mean, and he didn't have to give a great answer, but he could say, well, we just need to one day at a time. Let's just go back and get better, or I saw some improvement, or blah, blah, blah. But to kind of ridicule the kid and start,
that was the part that irritated me.
Yeah, me too. I mean, journalists take enough heat. And to go after
and some of them ask stupid questions.
They do.
And his was not a stupid question.
That was not a stupid question. That's correct.
I mean, so that was the part, like his condescending tone toward him and it not being a stupid question. You know, if he'd asked, I mean, there are all kinds of stupid questions journalists ask coaches. I mean, trust me, I've heard them.
Right.
I've probably even asked some of them. But, I mean, he was not, and just to me, it's an opportunity for somebody like Coach K to actually help that student at Duke, not condescend toward him.
Yep.
And it's just, it kind of speaks to sometimes, I think, the isolation of these programs from the general student population. You know, they're just outside the realm of the general university activities.
Right.
Probably even more so right now.
And having a tough year that they're probably not used to.
Yeah. You know, so anyway, it was cheap. And those kinds of things are really irritating me when it comes to these supposed Hall of Fame coaches. They're kind of getting under my skin with their pettiness, I guess is what it is. Their thin-skinnedness.
They're not perfect.
They're not. They're still humans.
They are.
We probably shouldn't revere them in the levels that we do, but all the same, they do have an audience.
They do.
All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, this next piece of information doesn't directly affect us whatsoever, but the Jefferson County Board of Education voted last week to let their kids play winter sports.
Barely. 4-3.
Yeah. There are some people obviously not on board. They might have a political split on that board there, John.
No kidding.
So they are going to get to play. They start playing Monday, I believe it is, February 1st. And they got to practice, I guess, the very next day immediately. So whatever that was, Wednesday or Thursday of last week.
And by the way, some of the best teams in the state come out of that area.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Butler girls have not played at all, and I think they're supposed to be one of the better teams in the state right now.
Louisville male and boys.
I mean, it has a huge impact on the state of basketball.
And regardless, I feel bad for those kids, to be honest with you. I mean, it's, they can make all the philosophical arguments they want to. They can even make medical arguments. But I'm just saying, for the kids, when they look around and they're going, everybody else is playing and we're not.
Yeah.
Across the river they're playing. Outside our county is playing. I just think that's a tough sell.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, good for the kids that they're going to go ahead and get to start playing. I mean, they're going to be a month behind in terms of...
play a month less games, too.
Yes, that is true. And, they also revealed, I guess it was actually before last week, when the actual state tournaments will be. The boys' state tournament starts March 31st.
Yeah.
And then the girls will start...
week after.
Yeah, April 7th, something like that.
And they went back a little bit to the old school where the semifinals and finals are on the same day, Saturday.
Yeah. Which is, I mean,
they
try. What do you think about that?
Well, they are avoiding Easter for one of them. So that's, well, I think it's, they did it for years. I think it's tough for the most part on the kids. I mean, it's hard to play. They play 2 games all the time in AAU ball, but it's a little bit different level of playing.
Yeah.
There's a lot more on the line there. I think it's tougher, but from the fans' perspective, I think it makes a better state tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not waiting around all day Saturday and waiting all the way around Sunday for the semifinals and finals.
Mm-hmm.
It's there and so forth. So I always felt like it was. Maybe the argument was it was better basketball. They got more rest, but it seemed like also there's some financial reasons to stretch it out another day too. I don't know.
But their attendance had been going down at these state tournaments anyway over the last few years, and I kind of wonder if that didn't have some sort of impact in its own right, because I think people who people would go for the whole of the state tournament.
It's hard to stick around that extra day. It's expensive.
Yes, it is. I mean, because you're staying in a hotel there in Lexington, and that is tough to do for 3 days, 4 days, depending on when you actually go up there.
Yep.
And so I do think maybe this may be actually beneficial to attendance, because maybe some people who came for those 2 semifinals do stick around for the night finals, and they would not stick around an extra day.
I agree.
So that might work out pretty well. And I think right now the limitation is going to be 15% capacity on that, which is basically what we have going on right now.
It's not set in stone. I think it could I could see them increasing a little bit with vaccines and things like that. By 2-3 months, they could. I could see it getting up to 30-40% by that time. We'll see. We just got to see how many people get vaccinated and where the numbers go.
Yeah, I think in the Thursday board meeting, Tackett said that they hoped it could be at least 25 or 30% by then. I'd say that's a good chance.
I think so too.
Because most of the educators are now getting their vaccinations.
That's correct. That's right.
Most of the medical staff have gotten their vaccinations, so it's starting to kind of spread out, generally speaking, to a more general population. And that certainly will help.
Yes, it will.
And then there was something else we were going to.
Tennessee.
Tennessee still does not have a football coach. Thank you, John.
Oh yeah, they're still looking. They have self-reported all their sins and faults and fired their coach with cause, as we talked about, and just be interesting to see what the NCAA does to them and to Louisville, who did everything that you can do.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about cleaning house.
Cleaning house, got rid of everybody and so forth. And if they come down hard on Louisville and Tennessee, I don't know what message they're sending to institutions. It looks like to me Louisville and Tennessee did the right thing.
Yeah.
And the only way that when you continue to punish schools for doing the right thing, I'm not really sure how that's good.
We were talking about LSU not being very good.
No, they still got the same coach.
Yeah, the
Will
Wade situation may be solved just by them being so bad at the moment.
Yeah.
But that they didn't do the right thing in the way that we would traditionally think of such.
No, they got, pretty much audio evidence of some stuff. So,
yeah, same thing with Arizona.
Yep.
So you're right. It's going to be interesting to see how the NCAA handles Tennessee and Louisville.
Whatever happens to the NCAA is a broken system that takes way too long to enforce the rules. Mm-hmm. I mean, the FBI investigation is now going on over 3 years. That's 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And you still have the same people that were same schools that were accused are still doing nothing's happened to it. Only one that's done anything is Louisville.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it will be an interesting precedent, but also it makes me wonder when it takes them not being able to find a football coach. The reason has to be because people are worried about what is going to happen.
That's right.
And so they're gonna wind up with an inferior coach,
or
probably.
If they go after a younger coach like that means that younger coach will take that job no matter what.
Yeah. They had signs up that said, bring back Lane Kiffin. I don't think that'll work.
Lane's not coming.
Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.